Today's episode is sponsored by Billy Keels Advisory Services. If you want to learn more about how to make your 99 optional, just go to makeitoptional.com. Once again, that's makeitoptional.com.
Helping you build freedom without losing your edge. This is the Going Long podcast with Billy Keels.
So it's not every day that I have the opportunity to sit across from someone that has been such an inspiration to me, that I watch every single day, continue to make positive impact, and also has very similar roots of starting in a corporate world and now being able to literally impact lives all around the world by hyper-focusing on a specific area. The gentleman who is going to be joining me today, who you're going to get the chance to speak to or listen to in just a couple minutes, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about this guy, right? Because he's absolutely amazing. Not only was he honored by the Barcelona City Council as an official city ambassador, listen to this. Since corporate life a while ago, and I'm sure he's going to tell us about that, he is the co-founder of association called the Metropolitan Business Association, Barcelona FinTech, the Professional Speakers Association. And listen to this, was even knighted by Her Majesty the Queen of Spain by the order of the ancient crown of Aragon, holding the title of Excelentísimo. He can tell you what that sounds like in English as well. And he's bestowed with the Cross of Justice. I'm not done yet. Hang on a second. He's also, and this is one of the things that I really appreciate about him, he's so committed to civic engagement. He is in associations founded like the American Society of Barcelona, Democrats Abroad, the Ronald McDonald House. The list goes on and on and on. And guess what? This gentleman started his professional career in the Federal Reserve Automation Services, and then even went on to work for one of the big, I think we can call them Big Six now. But aside from that, he is also known locally as the ExpatWhisperer. He is the publisher and CEO of, you got to check out the video version, everybody, of the Barcelona Metropolitan. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Mr. Victor Horcasitas. Victor, welcome to the show, man.
All right. Thank you. We wanted to do this for a while.
This is so overdue. I mean, such an inspiration to so many people around the globe, literally. And as I mentioned before, by hyper focusing on a specific location, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. But I mentioned all these different titles. I know that there's one that's really, really important to you. And before we even get started, the one that I know you take probably the biggest pride in is father.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'd love for you to help us understand, of all the things that I just talked to you about, give us some insight into who is Victor Horcasitas.
Wow. Well, thank you for all those accolades and set up. I just hope I don't fall short of those expectations. But as you mentioned, being a parent is perhaps the biggest challenge and the biggest self-realization. It's a constant learning process. But as Hillary Clinton wrote in that book, it takes a village. When you're an expat, it is really tough because if you don't have family in the country that you're in, you basically create your family. That's for everybody. When you're a parent, you understand even more, palpably the importance of a network. And in my case, I just gotten divorced after I moved here. I actually had to recreate my life because my cuñados, my brothers-in-law, were my best friends. My suegro and my suegra, my godparent and my godparents, I adored them, and I just didn't have a good relationship with my wife, and so basically I didn't have a network at the time beyond the family because I was very given to the Catalan style. You just jump into the family, and everything is so family-oriented. Every meal is there. People would complain about mothers-in-law getting in the way. The famous jokes. And my mother-in-law was in my house 3 or 4 times a day. When she wasn't there, she called 3 or 4 times. And the thing was, for me, I loved it. She was a wonderful woman. And so things were great. And then I had to recreate my life. And you talked about being a parent. Well, it was a challenge because my ex-wife, for whatever reason, divorces can be quite difficult, particularly if you have children in the middle. She didn't want them to grow up with an American identity. And it never really felt so important to me, but all of a sudden I didn't realize how American I really was until I found myself in another country, and everything that I knew was very United States focused. And I was extremely lucky beyond my wildest dreams to have my best friend and this woman who came basically to rescue me, to help me not only parent children, but to help develop the American identity when you're abroad, with classes after school, teaching them English. So my girls now speak with perhaps even more more correctly and more eloquently than I do in English with an American accent. And it's because really my what I call my wife, we're not really formally married, but we've been together for 18 years and she's still my guiding star. So, when you talk about your kids and how you bring them up is in different cultures, third culture challenges. They speak Catalan, Spanish, English fluently, but then at some point you need to decide, where do you want to live? And I really wanted them to come up with the values that I thought were good, and not necessarily ones that were bestowed upon me, but with my ventures. And Tara, who was with me through the whole, difficult time, and when I was probably at the worst part of my life, really helped us to instill values in my kids. And when you're abroad, there's so much more that you have to deal with, because we're not in a situation where we can rely on friends or families or just the culture of television and the culture of libraries, everything you get. And so we had to basically recreate that. And that's a big, big challenge. And one of the things I'm really, really proud of is my girls have really grown up and flowered and matured. One is she's an influencer at the moment, totally monetizing on TikTok and on Insta. And she's very affluent. She studied a year in the United States, and she happened to go to I think it's a nationally ranked public school in New Jersey. And I think it's one of these schools that actually a lot of theater, singing, art, talent come from, and then go off to make it really big at a very young age. And she was exposed to certain things that she never got. Like here, she was in a school of probably 10,000, 12,000 students. There was like 2 black students in the whole school. Muslim students, extremely rare. Jewish students, extremely rare. It was a Jesuit school. And so her ability to see a diversity really was not there. The biggest diversity was whether or not people were pro-Catalonia or pro-Spain and pro-independence. And then she went to Jersey, and she met, it was about probably 60, 70% black. And all of her friends, she had lesbian friends, she had transformed friends, she had drag friends. And I was like, well, I didn't expect her to have all of that. I'm not opposed to it, but it really instilled in her the ability to see values and I think appreciate differences in cultures, differences in styles. And, now that she's here and as an influencer, she's able to cross different borders, different boundaries, and she's a huge support for LGBTQ and basically anybody who's been a minority. She's that kid who always makes friends with the new kid who doesn't know anybody or who's getting picked on. That's her whole life. She's been doing that. My other girl is, I can speak for hours on my kids there, Billy.
I know, we have that in common.
She's 22. She's getting her PhD at the University of Edinburgh. And from a very young age, she knew what she wanted. I still don't know what I want to do, which is why I tried different things. But my little girl, she knows that she wanted to be doing medical research since she was 5 years old, man. And she never really wavered from that. But both of them have really strong values that really appreciate other cultures. And I'm perhaps, as you said, one of the most things I'm most proud of, but all of it had to do with really following the lead and allowing Tara, my partner in life, and in really guiding us to try to figure out what was best for them and not necessarily for us.
Yeah, and this is one of the things, right? And because you have, I've watched you and I see that you have made such an impact and are able to very easily cross what sometimes people would say are different silos, right? And you do that very, very seamlessly, very easily, at least looking from the outside. And at the same time, a lot of times people will go, oh my gosh, Victor's able to do all these different things. But if we kind of take it back into the essence of the podcast as well, which is look, you can start in one place. It doesn't mean that that's exactly where you're going to finish. And you started out like professionally, right? So let's take it professionally, because and I'm sure I'll tie this back into the family again, but you started out professionally. I mentioned in the very beginning, like you had a very, you had a secure role in the Federal Reserve, and then you were working at a big six firm, right? You can use the name if you want. It's up to you. But you made a choice in life to go from usually what most people aspire towards, or like working for really big brands and having the security, to really being able to follow your curiosity and move about the world, living in different continents, working in different countries, and some of the things we haven't talked about, but I know that about you. And I guess I'm always interested, because I know that the Going Long family is interested, is what was the motivation for you to kind of leave that life behind that everybody aspired to follow your own passion?
Okay. I'll try to be concise, but it could be hard. Bill, I don't know if I ever told you, my mom is one of 17 children.
Okay.
Not 17.
17, 1 7. Yeah. 17, 17, yes.
And they, in Mexico City, they were living, very poor. And my mom basically has done everything in her power to improve her lot in life, starting from basically no privileges and being very poor. My father was actually a homeless child growing up, so there's nothing from there. And I think, Billy, I really had an amazing role models to not really worry about reputation and what people thought of you, just to kind of push you and do what you can do. And I couldn't have had a better role model. My hero in my life was my older brother, Carlos. And so I have this funny story that, my mom went through some really tough times in life. And it wasn't until I was like basically deciding to go to college or something, I decided not to go. I had no intention of going to college. My brother was very successful. My goal in life was to work with my brother. I didn't care what he did. He could be cleaning the dumpster. I wanted to be with my brother. He was my hero. And my mom asked me, well, all my friends were getting into Ivy League schools. They're doing very well. I did okay, in high school. And she asked me where I wanted to go and how come we don't have any news. Like, Ma, I don't want to go to college. She looked at me and just one tear came out of her eyes, because I worked so hard for you to have this opportunity, and you're going to just not go to college, because she never went. She never even graduated like middle school.
So that for her was like the thing. And I'm only asking you that question because a lot of times first generation, there's this, because your parents sacrifice so much, like it's very similar to me, there's this, like, that's what they want for you, because they don't want you to have to repeat what they had to do to actually achieve what they achieved. Is that a similar kind of thing? Okay.
Absolutely. You crystallized it perfectly. And, we were in Washington, D.C. My father was a diplomat, so he had achieved a pretty high level, I think, success. Mm-hmm. But at the time when I graduated, financially, our family's going through a horrible position. My brother's about to declare bankruptcy. Father had disappeared, hadn't seen him for 2 years. And, times were tough. I was in charge of the phone, the electricity, and the gas. Those are what I paid for it in my house. Okay. And, I don't know if you remember what it's like to live in a home without a phone. We did that for several months, and it was just unbelievably hard. But anyway, getting back to it, when my mom had shed one single tear, it just tore me apart. And I said, okay, I went directly to college. I applied, and, I got into the University of Maryland. That's all. I didn't want to be far from my brother, because my goal was still to be with my brother, but I'll get a degree because my mom wants me to have one. My dad probably was like, couldn't believe what I was thinking. I didn't see him at the time, because he had a 2-doctorate degree, and one of them from Stanford. And so he's extremely well educated. And here I am, just eschewing, this is the opportunity. I don't want to go. Back in the day, I could put my entire matriculation. So my room and board was on my credit card. And I was only 18 at the time, and I was able to pay for my education on my card.
Wow.
And I decided long ago that I wanted to improve. And basically my goal was to impress my brother. That was my goal, my brother Carlos. Yeah. And so if I impressed him, life was great for me. And, he was the first one to tell me, if you get into the Wharton, I had never even heard of the Wharton School. He goes, I want you to go to the Wharton School. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. And I said, Carlos, I can't even afford to apply to the University of Pennsylvania, let alone. And he said, you worry about getting in? I got you. So I got extremely lucky. My brother by that time was doing okay. But it was at then that my brother said, no, don't be held back by me. You go out and create your own world. And, I was actually on Wall Street, I guess in New York. I was doing okay and making pretty good money. And I knew that if I didn't leave Wall Street, I would never leave Wall Street. So it was kind of golden handcuffs, doing pretty well, making good money. And I decided I wanted to go to get another culture. Both my dad, my brother, my mom was saying, see as much of the world as you can, as soon as you can. And that pushed me to consider Africa. But I was really fascinated by Korea, Taiwan, China, and Hong Kong, because Hong Kong still was British at the time. Yep. And that's what I wanted to do. I applied, got into all of them. And then I met my ex-wife. And she told me, well, if you want to learn, I could tell her I want to learn a new language. She said, we speak Catalan. I said, what the hell is that? And I'd even been to Barcelona twice. Yeah. And I didn't realize that they spoke another language because, I spoke Spanish. So I didn't realize they were speaking something. I just thought they spoke Spanish improperly. And when I had the chance, I said, you know what? I'm leaving New York. As much as I love that city, and I really do love New York City, I wanted to try something else, see different cultures. And I came out here through caution to the wind, perhaps brought a little bit of American arrogance with me, thinking I could get a job anywhere. If I made it in New York, I could do it here. And then I went 9 months and couldn't get a job. And I was here illegally. And there's all kinds of stuff. So I started actually fixing pirated networks to make money. And, from there, I started a little company. And you're talking about another company. It sounds exaggerated, but I basically became like a CIO for Deloitte & Touche at the very tender age of 26. There was no real structure to Deloitte. Deloitte was by far the smallest of the big six or big eight at the time here. And I started to work basically penetrating banks. Yep. So I got into banks. I did penetration studies, and then I would send them a picture of a transaction, blotting out the accounts and the stuff. And I'd send a message to management saying, figure out how I got into your system. I dare you. Here's the equivalent 10 euros. Back then it was 1,000 pesetas. It was about $10. And I said, I took this money. You can see it came from your bank. I challenge you to find it. So I would go into their system, go into their logs, send myself my money, and then erase it from their logs. And I said, if you can find it, you don't need my services. But if you can't find it, you need my services, because this could have been $1,000. It could have been $1 million. And by the time you realize it's even happened, I'd be out of the country. And actually, Deloitte ended up hiring me to do basically computer assurance services and basically infrastructure, data center studies to make sure that they were not vulnerable to being hacked by suckers like me.
And so I think there's a couple of things that you mentioned here, right? Because you were on this path, you were inspired by your, you're talking about your mom's tier. You also, your father was as a diplomat, but it seems like there was this constant, you understood the importance of currency, I like to call it, rather than money, but you understood the importance of currency. You had the phone bill, electric bill, the gas bill that you personally were responsible for. And at the same time, you had this inspirational figure in your brother, Carlos, who you've mentioned. But it doesn't seem like you were like there was a big focus on earning more money. It was more about, hey, you go for what will fulfill you. Don't do what I did, like the message that you got from your mom, go to the next level. And then your brother was saying, well, just get to this point. And then after that, it's really up to you. But during that time when you're starting like your early jobs, did you always feel like, yeah, just follow my curiosity, just keep going, doing what mom said, do what Carlos said, and just continue to explore what's in my mind? And sometimes that was countries, so maybe it was languages. Did it get louder or?
Yeah, it's easy to go back and create a narrative that sounds cool and sounds nice and makes sense and is logically progressing. That's not how life is. I was here, and I worked for Deloitte, and amongst my wife's friends, that's the only way I could measure like how I was performing from a career standpoint. Mm-hmm. I was making 3,300,000 pesetas a year. That's 30 grand. Yeah, that's like 30% of what I was making in New York just previously. Yeah. And when but at the same time, I was making way more money than any of my friends. And, people talk about how harsh the economy has been since, I think, 2006 forward. Mm-hmm. 1990s, that was hard. There was such a much higher level of unemployment. So I was always kind of bucking the trend. I tend to find situations in where I can be entrepreneurial and still have the backstop of a larger company behind me. I started a division at Deloitte, but it was still Deloitte. Yeah. When I worked with the Federal Reserve, I started the division, or I was ranked. I didn't start it. I chose to go to FRAS, Federal Reserve Automation Services. Mm-hmm. I was the 5th person on board. So I got to see it grow to like 300, 500 people within a matter of 6 months. Yep. And so to watch that growth was pretty exciting. Getting back to your point, I had been pretty instilled when I was young in life to appreciate other cultures. My father sent me to France when I didn't speak a word of French. The thing that my father did, by now he'd probably be arrested for what he did. He sent me to France with my little brother, $300 in my pocket, and just instructions on how to get to a military school in Normandy. So it wasn't even in Paris. I had to find my way to Normandy. And my father said, I grew up without a father, which is true. He didn't have a father. Carlos, my older brother, he grew up without a father until my father adopted him. Mm-hmm. And he said, you have no idea the power you have within you. Now, you're a smart kid. I was extremely shy. Anybody talked to me, I turned beet red. And if it was a woman who talked to me or a girl that I thought was pretty, oh my God, there's no way I could handle that conversation.
You start hyperventilating.
Oh God, I was so nervous. And then my dad says, you're going to get over this shit. So go to France. And like, well, we've never been to Europe. He goes, we've never studied French. And he's like, yeah, you can handle it. I'm sure you can handle it. You just don't think you can handle it. And these days, kids are not challenged, and they're always brought up to, there's helicopter parents taking too much care of them. I think my dad kind of erred on the other side, but he said, go. And we did. And, without going too far into the details, I learned to speak French. I learned that I didn't need to have my parents around, and I learned how to solve problems on my own. And, one of the challenges when people tend to think that they have a bad life or that things are rough, they can always get rougher. Mm-hmm. And so when I see people complain that things aren't going their way, like, you know what your problem is? You don't have enough big problems in your life. You have a big problem in your life, it has a way of really narrowing the focus and crystallizing your priorities. So after Deloitte, I was working with, I continued from Deloitte from Barcelona, and I moved on a promise that Deloitte was going to send me to Georgetown tax law. And they just kept balking because it was expensive and business was great in Washington, D.C. So they didn't want me to leave the business to go and get my tax law degree. What I discovered was I ended up being a headhunter. I left Deloitte because they wouldn't pay for my Georgetown. I became a headhunter, and I was getting paid incredibly well. Because I'd never done sales before. I was afraid of sales. I didn't want to do cold calls. And all of a sudden, I left Deloitte, and now I have to give explanations as to why I left a cushy job to do something kind of, experimental. And it wasn't so much the fear of failure, just I didn't want to be associated with it. I said, I got to be able to conquer this. And that's when I realized something that's beautiful in life, Billy, the beauty of sales. I mean, sales is rough. It's really rough. But if you have experience doing it, oh my God, everything becomes better. You're better to articulate, things not just in the world of business, but what you want out of life. And because all of us are always constantly selling ourselves. Yep. And it was not really known to me that that's something that you got to do. And I remember I felt real pressure because the owner of my company came to me and he told me, Victor, if you're not a millionaire within 6 months, you're fired. I'm like,
No
What?
pressure there, right? No pressure at all.
And he goes, everybody who works for me in this office is a millionaire. I have no exceptions to it. And I'm going to tell you how to do it. It's not hard to know what the secret is. It's hard to execute it and see if you can do it. Because people who aren't millionaires in this company, they leave before they're told to leave. And the magic of sales is wonderful because I didn't realize so many new leads are built by people who helped try to get there and then they quit. And all of their leads that they developed kind of fall into your lap. And I started to basically, I don't want to mention the names. It's been a long time, but this one company to place them in another company. And I actually went to them. I said, you have a business problem. I was working and they did fantastic training, but then they paid them crap and they wouldn't promote them. So there was a management consulting company in DC that works with defense contracts. And so we pulled them out and we kept putting them into Deloitte, Price, KPMG, all these cool companies, right? Accenture. And my wife woke up one morning and she was paralyzed. She couldn't move. She had a pinched nerve between L4 and 5 into her sciatic nerve. There's no way she could move. So basically I took a hiatus and I said, I'm taking a leave of absence to take care of my wife at the time. And all the physical stuff was between 10 and 2 in the afternoon. Those are prime calls. I couldn't do my job and do that. Yeah. So I left, but I had already hired a bunch of people to start working for me at NASDAQ. So I had like about 30, 35 people working for me at NASDAQ under my company. And I was a headhunter, but I went to the guy at NASDAQ that we were basically taking companies from. And I told him, you have a business problem. And he said, you have a lot of nerve. Are you Victor? You're the headhunter who keeps taking all my people. But everybody who I took from him spoke wonders about him as a great boss. And I'm like, well, how can you be a great boss? You pay decently and you keep losing people. But everybody who I hire from you talks wonderful things about you. And then he explained to me that he was basically they were going to get outsourced. They were going to trade them for EDS, and nobody wanted to become part of EDS. And so I walked out of there with a job offer for $30,000. And I was making a lot more than that. Yeah. And I kind of laughed. I said, you can add another digit or two and I might take you up on this, but I'd never done software development. He goes, well, if you think you're good at project management, you need time for your wife to give her physical therapy. You should be able to do software development, these small projects, and have gain really good credibility, gain practical experience, and still meet your goals. And I walked away and said, this guy's crazy. His name was Michael Callahan, by the way. And I went back and I thought about it. It's like, you know what? I'm going to take him up on that offer. So I went back to my headhunting office. I said, I'm going to quit. I'm going to take on this job. I've never done software engineering. I want a challenge. Billy, it happened to be that the company where he worked was literally about 100 feet from my front door. It was literally across the street. It's this big black building with mirrors. Nobody knew what was in behind it. They didn't have any branding. It was nothing, but it was NASDAQ. And they didn't want to know who was there. They didn't want any bombs or any threats or whatever. And so I got to work literally across the street from where I lived. This was perfect. Yeah. And I went and I accepted the job and I loved it. I loved working for this guy. I walked through fire for this guy. And I grew from having a development team of 3 or 4 people to having 150 software developers working for me, kind of a cross between the US and India. And that's where I started to learn about leadership and having all these different people. But the funny part was, while I was working there, I also had the people who were working for me also working there. And nobody knew that I had this side job because, they all worked for me. When you're a contractor, you have all these obligations, but basically they generate things and I put a 30% margin on it coming straight to me. And anyway, I don't know. I think I've kind of gone down a rabbit hole here.
No, but listen. So the thing that is really interesting, right, is that you talked about first of all, you have this growth mindset, and so being able to focus on growing, and this is something that I've actually witnessed from you myself. And then as you have the opportunity to learn more about sales, and as you learn more and more about sales, you start to recognize that sales at the end of the day, Victor, because I've spent over 2 decades there myself, of my corporate career, and then probably now 3 decades. But It's about being able to recognize when there's a problem and be able to propose a solution. And so you were able to not only grow, but also recognize where there were problems in sales. You were solving those problems with solutions. And then you had the opportunity to even talk about like what you were doing while you're working at one place, which fits in perfectly to this show. And also being able to, on the side, be able to build a business and be able to do them both effectively. And so it serves, once again, it's a proof of being able to follow your curiosity, not like keeping things dormant. When you have an opportunity to explore them, you explore them, right? And you're giving us a perfect example. But I also kind of want to bring it back full circle because, like I said, I would talk to you forever, and you and I talk together all the time. But I also want to bring back to kind of where's the impact that you're making today. I know what it is, but it's really unique because you are not only, I talked about it earlier, you are not only the publisher and CEO of the Barcelona Metropolitan, as we talked about the ExpatWhisperer. You've given us some insight into that. Multiple honors, co-founder of the MBA, Barcelona FinTech Professional Speakers Association, and it goes on and on and on. So there's a continued focus of being able to help to solve problems. Some of them are first world problems. However, you're proposing a solution. So I'd really like for you to talk to us this love affair that you have with focusing on a very specific location, which today is Barcelona. I know that it's Barcelona in Spain. You do a lot of things, but you really started focusing on Barcelona and really recognizing that there was an opportunity, a problem to solve. So if you could tell us a little bit more about what it is that you're doing today, how you're making an impact, and how you're actually serving and providing solutions to others, would be great.
Okay. Well, after my divorce, I needed to recreate a new network. And I realized that I had to learn about what it's like to move here. And Tara and I started to help foreigners kind of integrate into the city. Mm-hmm. And it's not just about life, but it's also about building businesses. And since I have always had this kind of, proclivity or interest in working with freelancers or startups, back in 2006, I started to help startups raise capital. And a lot of the challenges that people have, I think it's frustrating because there's such a focus on raising capital and having an exit, when in reality, you don't need to do any of that stuff. What you need to do is focus on sales. We come back to sales again. Yep. But when you're not from here, you need to develop a network. And sometimes freelancers who are new, they don't have a network. And a lot of the business that we do is referral marketing. Sometimes we don't even recognize the importance and the power of just people recommending you. And so when we acquired the Metropolitan, there was a number of synergies that I was seeing because we're all attacking kind of a similar group, English-speaking international people. And a lot of my clients, if they got together, they could actually add more value to them. And so working with the Barcelona Metropolitan allowed me to be even more connected to the English-speaking community. This was after having participated with the English radio network, which I had 2 radio shows with. And I started to realize that one of the I think, monetizable things that I have, and I had never really done it, was to try to give value to people just through my contacts. I didn't have to make any money, just get value to them by connecting them. Mm-hmm. And that's when we started to do a lot more work with the international community. The city has, I think, kindly acknowledged me as basically being a huge cheerleader for my city. I do love Barcelona with all of its major faults. And it's just, any cool city has challenges. Sure. Trying to preserve the traditions of and the provincial ways of maintaining your culture and your language and everything in Catalonia, and yet still wanting to be a world stage player. Mm-hmm. And this is a challenge that I love to be part of. And as I see a lot of expats and people who have lived here but never really engaged with the community, perhaps people like yourself, when I saw you and I saw your profile, I was like, oh man, I got to get this guy over here. And I like to see, I'm trying to do that. And one of the things I'm really proud of is my wife has really enlightened me, is a proper word, onto the challenges that women have, women entrepreneurs, and in particular, minority women, even Black women who happen to come out here, or Muslim women or Indians. And when we put all of that together, you know what? There's such amazing synergies that we can extract if we put our minds together, and everybody here is working their ass off. So that's never really a big competitive edge. Everybody's working their ass off. But not everybody has monetizable relationships that are easy, low-hanging fruit to grasp. And I think I'm in a unique position to do that. And so it really gives me pleasure to help other people get value. And I don't know how it sounds kind of cliche, but I really derive that value at the Metropolitan Business Association, the U.S. Navy League, or any organization. Usually what I end up doing is I do three things, really. I do either sales acceleration, I do capital raising, or I do professional network growth. These are the three areas I usually mentor in, and I can help people. But in the last 4 years, I've actually kind of carved out a niche for myself. I do mentoring for female entrepreneurs. I think it's kind of funny. I want to tell you why. Do you know why I do this?
I would love for you to tell me, because I don't want to guess and make a complete idiot out of myself.
It's actually pretty funny, because I used to, most of the entrepreneurs that I've advised over the years are men. Mm-hmm. And then I started focusing on small companies. And I like working with women because it takes a woman a long time to acknowledge that she needs help. Mm-hmm. It's hard for them to get to that point. But when they do, they readily accept it. They take notes. They value my time, I guess is what it comes to. Mm-hmm. I take on a man. They spend the next 6 weeks explaining to me why they don't need me. Right. And I don't care. You don't have to need me. But, it's if I have a chance, my wife is very strong on women empowerment and understanding the issues that are facing women, both from a health standpoint as well as careers. But if I have a chance to help a man or a woman, well, women are so underrepresented. So there's so many more challenges they have. And so I'm trying to I don't know that our efforts will move the needle, but I think it's worth the challenge.
Well, and one of the things I would say, Victor, and I'm big on language. And so I just would like to kindly push back on one of the words that you keep saying is you keep saying you're trying to do things, but I can tell you from having witnessed you multiple times that you're not trying, you're actually doing. And the women and men that benefit from your insight, from your experiences, both the most positive as well as at the time they weren't positive for you. But I know that every single time that you have made that impact, you are doing, you are not trying to do. So I would just very humbly like to say that it is actually in the doing. So Victor, there may be somebody that is, they're thinking, look, I've got a great corporate role. Things are going well. I like my job. It's providing great benefits to my family, but there's this thing about, I've seen this opportunity in another city, but it's far away and I don't really know how to go about maybe I have a young family. I have a couple clients that have actually taken young families overseas. My young family started here in Barcelona, but what would you say to that person who really has that voice that's saying, this is the opportunity, but you know what? And typically people are in the U.S., right? They're in the U.S. and they're thinking to themselves, well, no, I want to do it, but I don't want to do it. I want to do it. I don't want to do it. What would you say to that person?
I say you live once. Don't have regrets. Just do it. You go and you screw up. You made a bad decision. Come back. It's not that big of a deal. If anything, you want to show your children. See, this is one of the things that I think I benefited a lot by. My parents just took risks and did it, and they involved us. So I saw what worked. I saw what didn't work. And when things kind of went wrong, it's not that big a deal. Yeah. People are terrified of making the wrong step of what it looks like. My brother, who's, I would say immensely wealthy, he's very well off. Mm-hmm. He made many mistakes, but I got to watch him make those mistakes. I got to be part of those mistakes. Yeah. So I know what it takes, and I know how easy it is to get out. There's a lot of wealthy people who will tell you, it doesn't matter if I lost all my money. I know how to do it again.
Yep.
And so I would say to your question, it's easy to say, it's hard to put it to implement. Yeah. Don't worry, don't second guess yourself. Just go. You screw up, no bad. You learn, you get better at it, and you're showing your family, if you do have family, what it takes to have the guts to go to another country, another culture, another set of laws. But I would take this. Do a quick analysis to make sure you're not trading one set of challenges and problems for another. Because if you're going somewhere else because of you haven't resolved these problems over here, These problems are going to manifest over there.
They're not going anywhere. Or maybe from the Midwest, we would say they ain't going nowhere. So don't worry. You got to figure them out. Love that.
And actually, I learned a lot of lessons when I was in Nigeria. We went through the 2007, 2008 financial crisis. I used to have these clients in Nigeria, and everybody's always talking about the doom and gloom of what's happening. The capital markets have dried up. The Nigerians, the Africans in general. So I hate painting them all with the same brush, but this one I think is kind of fair. They were all saying, "Welcome to our world," and then you go to them and they're poor, but they're happy. Over here in the Western world with all this money, all this things are great. We're not that happy. We're stressed. We're freaking out over first world problems. These people in third world countries, we're going to call them that, they seem happier. They're lovelier. They have marriages and families that are intact. They last forever. That's the other thing that I would do. If you're going to venture, I have a very special place in my heart for Africa, particularly Nigeria, Ghana, and South Africa. Do it. Just go. They're wonderful places. Learn French. Il faut apprendre le français, hein?
Il faut apprendre le français. On peut vivre tous en France. As I lived in France myself for 3.5 years. So Victor, as we start to wrap things up, or as I wrap things up, or you and I wrap things up together here, I'd like to ask one question, just as a closing question. I have another one for you later, but it's more about how people can get in touch with you. But this first question is really, as I'm now inviting very select few guests onto the show that I want the Going Long family to get to know, I never thought that this podcast would make it 5 years and 540 some odd episodes. And wow. So I'd like to think that in another 5 years and maybe another 540 some odd episodes, we'll have a chance to sit down again. But I'd like for you to think about maybe just 3 years out. What message would you leave for Victor from 2028, time stamping this episode, of course, so that when we sit down again, you actually figure out, okay, well, what is it that you needed to hear from yourself today that you know is going to help set you up for a better tomorrow?
That was a deep question. I have a deep answer for you. I've gotten very provincial in my views and in my ambitions. I think too small nowadays. Mm-hmm. 10 years ago, we were talking about buying a company that had 700 employees and wanting to grow. Nowadays, I just kind of want to succeed or kind of progress my small businesses. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of, potential that I am not capitalizing on myself. Mm-hmm. So if I were to talk to myself 3 years down the line or give myself advice, hey, where did your ambition go? Why are you worrying such a small magazine when you could make the magazine a lot bigger? Or why aren't you going after, go after bigger, more profitable stuff? And if I'm not in AI, what the hell am I waiting for? Fintech, jump on it. There's so many great places. And actually, there's an area that I've been able to make, I think is the best place that makes money, is to really grow the import-export business. It's a fantastic. It's as long as you execute well, you will always make money. And stop focusing so much on startups. Startups are a harsh place to make money. Boring, annoying, ugly industrial projects, they make money. Figure out how to scale those and connect with Africa and Asia. The world is the focus on the global south. It's where it's at, man. Here we're in the U.S., Europe, our average ages are in the late 40s. Mexico, Sub-Saharan Africa, Central America, average age is like 18, 20 years old. This is where the future is, and we're still not focusing on these people. That's the future. We're focusing on the past. Dude, there's so much opportunity. Don't be shy. Go out and get it. And, you're lucky enough to have such a wonderful woman helping you out. Go. That's what
I love it. Well, thanks for leaving that message for your future self. But I would also say, Victor, I noticed just as you're talking about that, I see a recurring theme of growth that you're looking for, connecting, right? When you talked about connecting Africa, Latin America, and Asia, and being able to have that power of connection, growth, and solving problems, which comes back to sales that we talked about before. And if I think about the very beginning of our conversation, when you talk to us about how important being a father, the impact, and also being able to recognize that as you are creating family, creating network, that this is something that you have the opportunity to either proactively be a part of or, just kind of sit around. But since you've had many positive influences in your life, the influences not only from your mother, your brother, your father, and just you talk about your mom having one of 17 kids, just being able to recognize also too that there are sacrifices that have been made to get you to this point in your life. You continue to pay that forward, and whether that is with your wife, with your kids, and even the many lives that I know that you are impacting here just in one city, but also expanding that globally. I know that there are so many people that are listening to us right now, Victor. They're like, Billy just asked the guy the question. So I would love for you to share with me and the entire Going Long audience, what is the best way for us to connect with you, to learn more about you, also to what you've got going on in Metropolitan. I know you got like a bazillion people that follow you on LinkedIn every single day and all that stuff, but what is the best way for the Going Long family to get in touch with you?
To get in touch with me, I'm a LinkedIn whore. So you want to get in touch with me, get to me through LinkedIn. If we're not connected, because I think I've reached my maximum connections, just write a comment in one of the things that I put up there. I'll get in touch with you that way. Also, my phone number, my email are on my banner.
Awesome.
On LinkedIn, my personal ones. You don't have to go too far. And, I'd be delighted to talk to people who are doing interesting and fascinating stuff with Metropolitan, because we're looking for inspirational people to kind of give guidance and then, a lack of word, inspiration to other people who are coming behind them. And so I'd love to help out if I can. We are here in Barcelona, and Billy talking about growing. I want to grow in London. I want to grow in Dubai. I want to grow in Madrid. You're part of my team here. You're part of my tribe. I love you, brother. I really do.
Yeah.
I think you're a fantastic person. Love what you're doing. Love your message. Keep it going.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, my friend. And like I said, I actually have one request of the Going Long family. Not if, but when you reach out to Victor, if he's already reached his maximum limit and he likes to be on the LinkedIn thing, as he said, do me a favor, do yourself a favor, and do Victor a favor. Make sure that you let him know that you've already invested time in our conversation today, because that's going to help you. That's going to help Victor just make a connection even more efficient, much more effective, and you all can learn about each other's world. So that would be my ask of you in the Going Long family. Victor, as I said from the very, very beginning, man, I really appreciate you. Think the world of you. Continue to be inspired by the way that you are able to connect so many different people from so many different backgrounds, all with the effort and the objective of growing and moving people forward. So from the bottom of my heart, I want to say thank you very much for deciding to invest your time with me and the entire Going Long family today.
It's an honor, Billy. Thank you so much.
All right.